Salutations from space and aloha from Earth, friends. Tell you what we are listening to. It's hard to mute this here, but we'll listen to it in full at the end of this flow. It's a 7-minute and 3-second songs, The Planets in the Trinity, by Eric Deutsch, really wonderful piano player, dear friend of mine. And a cohort we've teamed up to tour as musicians in our previous life and this life, and now we get together to create these soul songs. And for this year of 2022, which features 13 new moons, we've created 13 7-minute songs where I send astrology notes to Eric, and he creates music based upon certain parameters and symbols I send. And that's probably as much of that as I need to share right now. But at the end of this flow, we'll get out of the mind and get a little bit more into the body by using this resonance of soul song music to guide us into the energies of this Aquarius new moon. So 13 new moons in this year of 2022, and the second one has just aligned. It is February 1st, 2022, if you're into that whole Empire Pope calendar trip, you know. And where I sit, this Aquarius new moon aligned in the time we call night. I think I'll actually start with that. I want to start with how this new moon looked in the Bay Area of California. We want to act locally, right, while thinking globally. Locally, this was my experience. And the reason why I want to show this is twofold. One, I was asleep at the time, which is good. That's a great way to connect to the night, right? And the themes of the dreams. But you can see here, all the planets were below the horizon. We have Uranus above in the North Node, and Chiron kind of sitting in the 7th. But, you know, this can, in some ways, resonate with Uranus. It's interesting because here, like in California, this Aquarius new moon aligned in the 5th house, right, of passion and creativity and romance and these things. Aquarius, by many modern astrologers, is associated with the 11th house because of this idea of the natural zodiac, where Aries is the first, and therefore Aquarius is the 11th. And, you know, there's some resonance with that astronomically. I have certainly found the tropical zodiac is a directional device, and this 0 Aries point is due east on the ecliptic, or the path of the sun, the zodiac, when seen from the center of Earth, where we are all one, where all earthlings are connected. And so I think there's a beautiful essence there. And so here in California, what is it to experience an Aquarius new moon in the 5th if Aquarius itself is associated with the opposite side, the 11th? Now, traditionally, that idea that Aquarius is the 11th is definitely not the scene. And I mean, I'm interested, again, for me, the signs, which were once called houses, are the terrestrial houses. They are the houses of Earth. And I can feel some resonance and some truth with the idea that Aries is Earth's first sign. Isabel, what do you think? Yep. But on a whole nother level, right? We don't want to get locked into this program that there's only one. Like, if Aquarius does have an 11thness and is about community, or at least establishing a more utopian ideal for a way of living for the community or civilization even, and there's this 11thness, then why would we ever get locked into the paradigm of looking at a chart only through the eyes of one sign, right? So what I like to do, and what I did with Eric Deutsch for these soul songs this year, the 13 new moon songs, is I created solar sign charts, which just takes the sun, and therefore the new moon, because of course this thing we call new in regards to the moon is when moon every month sets the controls for the heart of the sun, to use this beautiful term from Roger Waters and Pink Floyd. If I look at the Aquarius new moon as Aquarius on the 1st, and next month's Pisces new moon is Pisces on the 1st, right? And the following month's Aries new moon is Aries on the 1st, and then Taurus on the 1st for the following Taurus new moon, etc. I'll get a chance to look at the 12 eyes, right? We see 6 houses above the horizon and 6 below, and we are tuned to the energies through the eyes of the horoscope, which isn't a newspaper column. It's the ascendant. It's what's first. It's what is rising in the moment of your birth, in the moment now, in a global moment like this, right? Aquarius rising. And so a 12th of the earth was experiencing Aquarius on the rise when moon and sun aligned some, I don't know, 9 hours ago. And there's a very fascinating revelation when we allow for revolution, the sun moving through the signs, because Earth orbits the sun, and allow for rotation, right? Earth spins the daily energy. So if we just turn the wheel and look through the eyes of each of the signs, we find very different and beautiful truths. For example, the 9th house traditionally is called the house of God. And these days, people usually say long distance journeys and higher education, but the highest education, the longest journey is our education with and our connection to and our seeking of spirit. Traditionally, the 9th is the joy of the sun, which was seen as a much more spiritual device, I feel, in times of old. That's where it lives in my heart as well. And this is a very special day for the sun. In many books, this February 1st is a time where many will celebrate the cross-quarter holidays, the between equinox and or solstice and equinox time in this case, that some call Imbolc and some Candlemas, and it's had many names. And a special time for moon and sun. And for many who celebrate luni solar time or soli lunar time and actually align their months with months, with lunations, it's not necessarily this moment of the exact moon sun conjunction. For new moons are like no moons, but when the moon is reborn as she is in the west, when she smiles as Diana's bow, that waxing sliver crescent in the sunset sky, smiling in celebration of her survival of the fire, this will be the time where the new year begins for many in this world, in this entrance of the water tiger, right? Although some will have already aligned that way, those who are doing, I guess you could say, a fusion of Chinese calendar with the, well, frankly, empire Roman, like Pope emperor calendar, this Gregorian thing that many of us use. And I'm getting into one of my favorite subjects, which is time and calendars and consciousness. My consciousness has been there for many years, and I've just received an invitation by my dear friend Ursula Stockter to go share in Mexico in the Mayan realms in Tulum around the equinox this year. And so finally my dream of seeing the famous shadow serpent at the pyramid of Kukulkan in Chichen Itza will be achieved, clouds allowing. And I'm really excited. Anna and I are going to get down to Quintana Roo and to Yucatan and get away a little bit and go see the shadow serpent. And then I will then present at this dragon retreat in Tulum. I should show you an image of that. I'll try to bring it up here by the end, okay? Because it is an open invite. It's going to be a small thing, but it's going to be a really wonderful gathering. And one of the presentations that I will give is on this idea of calendars and consciousness, which in many regards has been inspired by Mayan calendrics and Mayan time, or what we know of it. And the idea of keeping many calendars at once and different calendars with different purposes. So we in astrology, we often use a calendar of the sun, solar months, the sun moving through the tropical signs, the directional signs, I will say. And Aquarius, by the way, is the direction southeast. Just watch this Aquarius sunrise. Tale for another time, I think. I'm reminded that the last time I was in Yucatan for an Aquarius new moon, I was with Ursula and Maurice Fernandez and Onur Dozer and Don Marzo and a great group of starry seekers that gathered to celebrate the heavens and the earth some years ago. And I had an opportunity at night to climb the Pyramid of the Magician in Uxmal, which was one of certainly my highlights when there was a new moon like this, very close to my own personal midheaven. And, there was something about that climbing. It was in the stillness. I'm going to put this away and just wrap for a bit. And in like the cold of night. And we were breaking the rules a little bit. Well, I don't want to say too much more, but, and there was a danger there, but this idea of like climbing higher and getting into these places of the cooler, thin air, I think that's so alive in the Aquarian ideal, perhaps even the Aquarian need, and something that begs for our intentions to align to the celebration of the celestial symphony and to find agreement with the heavenly host, the heavenly harmonies, so that that music can guide our walk here on earth, right? So this is one of the reasons why astrology, right? So it used to be just so you can understand the fates, right? Your chart does you. We've gotten to a place where we want to do our chart. It's the roadmap of the soul. It's a beautiful practice and rather new, right? And we want to also take our chart out of the middle of the thing and just look at the global happenings and see how they express here. The heavenly happenings express on earth as above, so below. So we can gain some more perspective of the weirdness of our world and maybe also align ourselves to what we see in the current and prepare ourselves for what we see in the future waves, right? But also setting our intentions to the heavenly happenings allows us to receive more support from the wider field. Isabel, what are you looking for, hon? Isabel's dismantling the couch in front of me, which let's just honor. There's a symbol of, the couch is a symbol of comfort, right? And so there's a symbol of discomfort that Isabel wants you to see. Now, probably she's also looking for a stash, right? Something she buried in the couch long ago. But I want to like sit with that right now. I'm sitting here looking at this couch, which is currently disheveled, and she just ran away to who knows where. So she came and she rearranged the picture so that I could receive this sign, if you will. Now, what do I do with that? What do I do about that? That's up to me, right? I think this is a great transmission of the gift of astrology, which, it's a little bit different astrology, right, than like tarot, right? I mean, so tarot, astrology alike, we are interpreting signs and literally images, right? Which, I mean, it's a beautiful truth that like what we call signs today were once called images. Like Aquarius is an image, Pisces is an image. I really dig that. And it helps me remember that, like with the tarot, which obviously there's something established, as I'm in that mode. Let's take a picture, look at a tarot image. 6 of Swords. Why? because this Six of Swords corresponds to the second decan of Aquarius, where the moon and sun have just aligned. And this from Building Beautiful Souls. Thank you. Found it online just now. And from the Radiant Rider-Waite deck, right? Which is the Rider-Waite images brought to maybe a little bit more of a colorful expression. And from Building Beautiful Souls, they say better times ahead. New home and hearth. Feeling trapped. He's like, maybe want to rearrange those. Yeah, where's the new home and hearth? I mean, you know, obviously in this image, we're moving to another land. You can see the kind of Aquarius glyphs in the turbulent water on the right. Why is it turbulent? I mean, it's the shores that we are leaving, but that's also what happens between a skiff and the shore, right? You can see that the water is very still, and there's this journey to this place with trees and light and through the still water on the other side. Still shallow water, I think, is a really important expression in this particular card. And we see too, don't we, right? I mean, it feels like a mother and a child. I mean, is the ferryman part of the crew, or is he hired, or just somebody who volunteered help to get them to the other side? Why Six Swords? I mean, too much in the card to speak about, but let me remember why I opened it up in the first place, which is just to say it's like that, right? Like we look to the card and we can read the expressions from many teachers over time. We can read the words of, oh, wait, you know, and rider, and see what we find there maybe. But it really is, I think, in tarot helpful to just first tune into the image. Like, it's been a while since I've sat with clients and read cards professionally. I don't actually, I never really did that professionally, but it was my gateway to becoming a astrologer. I'm getting more and more into it now, especially as I'm learning more about the correlations of the tarot and the zodiac, thanks to folks like, you know, Gary Caton and Austin Coppock. Also just started reading this 36 Secrets by T. Susan Chang, which is so far brilliant and highly recommended. I'm excited to maybe take some of her tarot courses. And Austin Coppock's course on the decans is one of my favorite astrology classes I've taken, actually. I just received that online. Isabel and I, like, it was like dog walking soundtrack for us for a couple weeks last month or something. And I think it's really important when we come into this time now. Yeah, I wanted to set up the fireplace in such a way that we get to see this very organic amethyst cathedral. But it's like it's grounding and also very blade. It very much sends us up, like sitting with that thing that I found my way to in Sedona, Arizona. And then this like robot, which was a gift for Koa some time ago, that well, it hasn't found much use, but so here we go. I also want to just like honor books on this side. And over here, some creations. It's a drawing by Koa on the chalkboard, and a drawing on the paper below. And then, oh yeah, beautiful. That photograph above was taken by my stepfather, Doug, whose birthday comes soon. And so, yeah, I love that. You know, the art itself, the creation of the art is like a giving, right? I mean, it's received and then offered. And then the books are the opposite. We're receiving what has been offered. Do you feel me? Not that they don't inspire original thought, which itself, especially in the world of the air, is creation itself. In the beginning was the word. Isabel disagreed, I think. I'm not sure, but she did change sides to the left of me. So how do we read the signs? That is part of this thing. And, you know, on the robot side of the Aquarian realm, or let's say on the robot side of the sacred science, you do the math. right? You learn the rules and you apply them, right? Here's a bunch of variables and this is the equation, you plug them in and this is the answer, right? And astrology has some of this and it's beautiful. I mean, it's one reason why I am kind of in an engineering mind, very called to astrology, maybe more than I was to the system of Tarot. I mean, I was always so amazed with Tarot of like, somebody had asked a question and I knew the cards, right? And then sure enough, and I would usually actually have the other draw the cards because I was more interested in seeing like how that worked, right? I am a scientist in that way, and I'm very interested in learning through what I observe. Um, and getting to the place too where the cards would be face down, I could see what they were. Like weird things were happening in that realm for me. But I loved how there was always an opportunity to release myself from describing an image, a card based upon what I read in a book, right? Experience, like seeing how that card expressed or came into the room when similar themes were alive, and seeing how the image, right, was seen by different people in different ways, right? It tickled different eyes with different light. And so that was always a wonderful teaching for me in Tarot that wants to remind me always to be this way in astrology, which is, what do you see? So like before I tell you what I read in some book or, what this card is, as far as I'm concerned, or what I've known it to be, let me ask you, like, I mean, let's just do it. Although sadly, I only have a microphone and no speakers to hear your ears, right? So please use the comments and I'm very excited to get back and look at that later. What do you see here? How many of you go to the colors? Like the type of clouds in the sky, that it is daytime, apparently with the light behind us and like to the right. So which direction are we going, right? See, that's gonna not be what calls most people, because I'm so, well, as I like to say, earth-stronomical. my school is the school of earth astrology, and this idea of getting directions is a very significant part of that. How many of you are counting the planks on this skiff? How many of you are noticing that this must be shallow waters that we're crossing, because only shallow waters are crossed with a pole, right? Not an oar. How many of you are counting trees, or at least groupings of trees? How many of you are counting swords? I mean, maybe you can let the words do that for you. Are you tuning into what is worn, to the colors? Are you wondering about this steersman, affinity for the primaries or whatever it may be, right? Like there is so much to see. I mean, when I draw, and then so much of my astrology I'm learning at what I call the launch pad, like the sacred geometry realms. I use blue for water and green for earth and red for fire, which are pretty obvious. And then I use yellow for air. And I hope air will never be that yellow. Although sometimes it is. It's nice to see what Owl and I were staring at literally half a year ago at Beltane on May 1st, which was Venus as evening star first appearing there. When I'm finished here, I'm going to run outside and see Venus in the morning sky, right? So things change. Planets just keep dancing. Earth keeps rotating and revolting. Wait, is that the right conjugation for revolution? Interesting. I guess rotating and revolving. Anyway, yeah, sometimes the sky is yellow. So yeah, one of the things I'm kind of inclined to see in that card is like what I would see in that way is like completion of an elemental color palette, but that's like a very personal thing, you see. And how much of our sacred science of astrology wants to be personal too. There's some arguments about this. I want to show you as time aligns that this Aquarius new moon is right with Aquarius Saturn, who traditionally is said to rule the sign. Actually, traditionally, no, that rulership thing, which I'm not too fond of, so I always say that in a weird voice, like rule the sign. The older term is that Saturn was the domicile lord. Again, I have a hard time with this idea of lords. I like to say guides personally. But domicile lord, like literally the landlord, like, you know, the sun and the moon are meeting in his house. But you're like, no, house, that's like the first house. Or isn't Aquarius the 11th house? Well, traditionally, what we call houses, the celestial houses, were called places. And the signs were called images or houses, right? So Aquarius is one of Saturn's house. You can see that most of the planets are gathered in Saturn's houses because they are Capricorn and Aquarius. And we see Venus and Mars together in Capricorn. We see retrograde Mercury, and we don't see Pluto together in Capricorn, right? And then, of course, Moon and Sun meeting in Aquarius right there with Saturn. So it's nice to go visit someone's house when they're around because they can show you what their country's all about, you know, and they speak the language. I mean, sometimes it's nice to just go when they're not home and you're feeling like more on vacation, right? But you don't know your way around. It's really nice to have a host who knows how a place operates. So what I want to show you here is like if we go to look to, let's look at the full moon. So this will be what I call an Aquarius Leo cycle. Why? Aquarius new moon followed by a Leo full moon. That's not always how it works. Sometimes we have an Aquarius new moon followed by a Virgo full moon, because between the time when the moon is new and a couple of weeks later when the moon is full, the sun changes signs. That is not the case this time. We have the new moon in the second decan, the second 10 degrees of the 30-degree sign called Aquarius. And then the full moon will be reflecting light of the sun in the third decan, in the last degrees of the sign of Aquarius, right? And the full moon is going to be very close to the royal star Regulus, the heart of the lion, which very recently has processed into the tropical sign we call Virgo. That's going to be a very beautiful alignment to see. I'll just say right now, because the moon is square her nodes, those of you with eyes to see will understand that that means the moon is going to be well above Regulus in the northern hemisphere sky and below in the southern hemisphere zone. I have so much to say about that, but I think I will leave it there for now. What I really want to do is jump ahead to the next new moon to show you how the Pisces new moon next month is conjoined Jupiter, who traditionally is said to rule the sign of Pisces. Modern astrologers see Neptune there. Okay, well, look, it's a Pisces new moon, literally conjoined Jupiter with Neptune in Pisces. Check out how at Pisces new moon next month, we have this Mercury Saturn conjunction in Aquarius, which I love showing charts this way, right? It helps us see that Aquarius is the 12th of Pisces. Just as when we look to this Aquarius new moon chart today, it's easy to see that Capricorn is the 12th of Aquarius. So we have these really interesting new moons, right? We've got this Aquarius new moon with Saturn. We have a Pisces new moon with Jupiter. It's a gift for us. We've just moved through a time where Jupiter was in Sagittarius and Saturn in Capricorn, also said respectively to be those planets' houses, and moved after they've met in Aquarius and Jupiter spent some time. Now Jupiter is returned to Pisces, which is said to be Jupiter's other domicile or other home. So we are living in a time, and interesting times at that, where we have these, well, gas giants and these social planets, as they've been called: Jupiter, the crescent of soul above the cross of matter; Saturn, the cross of matter above the crescent of soul, celebrating life in their homes. Jupiter in Sag for about a year, as he does, while Saturn was in Capricorn for about 2.5, and well, really 3. Saturn spends extra amount of time in Capricorn and Aquarius alike, which is an intriguing thing. And then Saturn into Aquarius, where they met in the very first degree on December solstice 2020, and Jupiter did his time and is now seen the light and return to Pisces, where in the northern hemisphere the light kind of begins to return when the sun finds its way to that watery sign and the flowers start to bloom. A different thing is true in the southern hemisphere, right, where Aquarius, like this time, is not the middle of winter but the middle of summer. For all of us here on the planet Earth, though, as described from her pole, the world tree, the sword of our stone, the spine of Gaia, our rotational axis, Aquarius, and especially the middle of Aquarius here, is literally southeast from the center of Earth, from where we are all connected, where we are all one. And it's helpful to get that global perspective. Sometimes to do this, we have to go out to space and look back, right? And, I've never done that. I'm no William Shatner, y'all. I'm probably not going to have an opportunity to achieve that dream I've had since I was a kid, of floating in that 0G realm, right? And looking at this beautiful water world called Earth from far above the watery place. All right, so I guess let's start reading these images a bit and seeing what we see. What do you see? I think when we talk crystal and robot, at least, there's something about the organic and the inorganic. The organic, and I love that these are called cathedrals in a sense, which begs me to return to this idea of the 9th as the house of God, and what is it in the Aquarius design for Libra to be there. So I'm going to retrograde back to that seed that was planted some time ago and just speak to that, right? So if Aquarius does have humanitarian ideal, right? That's going to require us to pray in the temple called relating, in relationships, right? Because if we're dealing with community, we're now, if we do this in a good way, dealing with a plethora of unique individual relationships, right? So, I mean, this is the key, by the way, if you really want to rock the stage, is you make eye contact with everyone, right? So, and that's an important thing, right? Or, there it is said from like, oh, rock star pro tip, but how about like sitting in a room, like if you're presenting astrology, perhaps you will be speaking about this new moon, whether through video realm like this, where I can't really like connect to you all. There's only one camera. That's a very weird reality in our current quote unquote social experience, especially in lockdown time, isn't it? Right? But when I'm out touring around and doing talks or something like this, I want to see all of the eyes, not only so I can give uniquely, individually, but so I can receive. That's how the field works. And it's really nice when we're live because, I mean, right now I could go find the comments here and see how you're engaging and respond, and it'd be nice. It's too much. It's like too many screens for me. And then I mean, I'm already meandering anyway, right? But in the room, a hand goes up, or somebody just adds or subtracts, right? Or redirects or whatever it may be. And we can feel that field so much more beautifully. And, when you connect with a similar group, like I've just started a school, right? And so there will be voices that I get familiar with, right? And relationships that I get to foster personally, right? And then the community becomes these series of relationships. Like one of the things I'm most excited about in my School of Earth Astrology is creating these study groups, because we have people from all over the world. There's 140 students have signed up, right? So then we have Southern Hemisphere and Northern Hemisphere and time zones far on the other side of the world and all the things, right? So organizing different study groups, not only for like location and preference, like people are day and some people are night, or their schedules don't allow them to meet by in the light, you know, whatever it may be. But also by like level and interest and just kind of personal affinity. Like, how do you astrologize? Like the furthest thing from like, this is how it's done. This, I've cracked the code and let me show you, right? Like I am like, hey, this is what I do. Let me show you. Like it's working right now, but it's my, I don't know, version 6.0 or something. It's the sixth sword of my astrological approach, and it will change again and hopefully change and keep changing and keep changing. Oh my gosh, I pray that I can look back at the way that I astrologize from 12 years from today and say, oh, well, I knew a little bit. You know, I can see why I did it that way with that limited amount of knowledge. Now it's like this with that limited amount of experience. I mean, I've only been after this thing for 10 years, 9 years as a counseling astrologer, right? Like a baby. So what's it going to be 9 years from now and 9 years from then, right? That opportunity to continue to grow, I think, is so important, right? That's like revolution. Is that the robot or the crystal? You know, hard to say. I mean, more motion from over here, perhaps, although I can't find this remote control. So let's talk about control and let's talk about remote. Anyway, one of my key phrases as a teacher is I'm not here to teach you my astrology. I'm here to further remind you to remember yours. What do you see in the images? So before we say, hey, this is what this is, let's ask, what do you see? I loved, and I mean, even as an astrologer, like when I used to sit with clients in the same room, I'd often light a fire, right? Because it helps open up, especially in the Seattle cold where I lived at the time. And I had so much stuff around. And I did have cards and, right, but things for people to kind of touch. And one of the things I had, which I loved, was these Zodiac Smurfs, right? Check them out. I think it was in 2012, they made the 12 Zodiac Smurfs, right? And I would like, I'd have them positioned directionally aligned around a globe, but sometimes I would just mess them up and ask a client to like pick a few or all of them and just arrange them. It was so fun. And you would get people creating conversations that are embedded into their nativity, into their birth chart, in the way that they arranged Zodiac Smurfs. You know, it was like this amazing participatory, creative, artistic astrology. And I think that's a very important thing for us to remember. I think it's very alive in this chart now, which is why I'm here, by the way, which is why I wanted to share a tarot card. Not only because when I woke up at some ungoddessly hour and I'm in the bath today, so I wouldn't go straight to work. I'm reading this book and reading about the faces, as the decans were called, and this image of, I read actually the 5 of Swords and then turned to the 6 of Swords, and I'm not finished with what T. Susan Chang has to say about that card and its correspondence with the second decan of Aquarius, where Moon and Sun just met and where Saturn's been living for some time. But I will say that she calls that place, which also hosts my midheaven, so I'm always excited to read. It's hard to take our chart out of the middle, isn't it? She calls it the celestial navigator. which is super fun. My midheavens there, we often associate that very special pivot of a chart with career. And I've often called myself celestial navigator as part of what I do. So that was like a fun thing to see. It's also said to be the decan of Aquarius, that is, they say, ruled by Mercury. That the first is Venus's face, and then Mercury's, and then the moons. That these are the three decans of Aquarius from the traditional point of view. Another way to look at that is that the first 10 degrees of Aquarius is like Aquarius itself, and therefore Saturn. And the next 10 degrees is like the next air sign, which from Aquarius is Gemini, and therefore Mercury. So we find this kind of double mercurial alignment, whether we're looking at this, triplicity or trigon or element, you might say, approach Aquarius, Gemini, Libra, the three air signs, or what's called the Chaldean order, where again, the faces of Aquarius are expressed by Venus, Mercury, and Moon, right? If we look at the triplicity, it's like Aquarius, Gemini, Libra, so Saturn, Mercury, Venus. And in the middle, then we just get pure Mercury. So hopefully you're at least experiencing that today. And in true Mercury currently retrograde from Aquarius to Capricorn fashion, hopefully I'm bringing this back a little bit and helping you see some of the older bits of the code. I would also share, as long as we are there, that this new moon met. I will show you this thanks to Astro Gold. Here in the terms or the bounds of Venus within the sign of Aquarius, these are called the Egyptian bounds that just showed up. We can look at this through an ascensional dignity table as well. Here in California, it was a moon day night, Saturn's hour of moon's day, when moon and sun met in Saturn sign of Aquarius. But in Saturn sign of Aquarius, where Mercury's face lives, or 10-degree division or decan, and in the terms or bounds of Venus, okay? Saturn sign, or was it the sign of Uranus, right? And with Uranus now in Taurus, here on the square with this Aquarian new moon, and still with Aquarius Saturn, although that's starting to depart. We'll see them get further apart and then closer together, but they had 3 exact squares, Aquarius Saturn in Taurus last year of 2021. You know, if you're into that whole Pope Empire calendar trip. And we will not have exact squares between the two. Again, they get very close. They get within what many would consider to be orb, but we have had their 3 exact squares, right? So is Taurus Uranus the crystal and Aquarius Saturn the robot? Or is Saturn the crystal and Uranus the robot? Or how does that work? And whose sign is it anyway? And why should we even do this rulership trip, right? We're not supposed to own lands or houses. That's not human, right? Is astrology just colonialism and ownershipism, landlordism? The interesting questions: which of these two, Saturn or Uranus, is more about freedom, a word we often find tickle the tongue when we describe the ways of the Aquarian sign? Both? I mean, how does Saturn find freedom? How does Uranus find freedom? How has Uranus offered new freedoms? Or let's say, since the discovery of Uranus, and perhaps the way that Uranus was discovered, what kind of freedoms have come about through technology? Uranus found with a telescope, right? And by accident, William Herschel and Caroline, his sister, thought they found a comet. Comet hunting was a fad at the time with these giant telescopes that only the rich could afford, you know? They found a comet that actually moved like a planet, and behold, Uranus, who astronomers for long ago had seen and recorded, but didn't know, was a planet because couldn't track it for enough days. The telescope allowed this, the evolving technology. What freedom has been afforded by technology to push a button and have a light go on, to push a button and have a fire go on. At what cost? Natural gas is being burned. Well, draining the batteries that the solar panels charged yesterday in the light. But where did those panels come from, right? Were they mined by a solar truck? So before I get all haughty about the investment of putting solar and going green, where do those batteries come from? Where'd the panels come from? How? And how do they get from there to here? And these kinds of things, right? Like Saturn reminds us to stay grounded in our liberations, right? And look to the logistics of the thing and the blueprint, right? So we want to change the world. Great. How? Why? How should begin with why. So if you want to change the world and have a world where there is more equality and more harmony, more love, then you cannot do that through hate. But then you say no, because unless the old goes away, there cannot be the new. So the sword is here only to pave the way for peace. Good fucking luck. Pardon me. And you know, when the guillotines start falling, you end up finding that the revolutionary is fighting for the folks they think they are fighting against. The age-old trick. Did you know the US Revolution against the British was funded by the British? Well, it's hard to call World Banks British anyway, isn't it? Hidden history, friends, hidden history. It's time for us to have a look, right? Because if we want to reshape the world, we need to understand the shape of the world today and where we are coming from. This is one of the great gifts of cyclical consciousness that astrology opens. Having an understanding of where we come from and how the cycles realign will help us see how to most intentionally get to a better place. Or sometimes it's simply, this is awareness of, and therefore an opportunity to prepare for the storm. There aren't storms in space. Well, you know what's fun is, yeah, there are, because we call them solar storms, right? and you're on a ship, maybe with a captain, and it's all this maritime trip, right, out there in space. What a strange thing that we bring the water there. I just watched the Martian, and there's, if you've seen that film or read the book, do we read books still? You'll know there's this whole bit where this one astronaut who was stranded on Mars and realizes that as he's moving around, he's basically working by maritime law as it goes, and that he's a pirate, right? Like, I really love that. There's so much space pirate and space captain and armada and ships and admirals, you know, as you tune into the sci-fi, it's like you're just out sailing on the open seas. And don't we say that, you know, space, the final frontier, but the seas, the final frontier on Earth. You know, there are seas where no telescope will ever see. Homonyms, always interesting. Open gates. That was an interesting retrograde within the sentence, but let's not get hung up there. Okay, right? Like, I mean, you don't have a suit that will let you live in space unless you design one. You don't have a suit that will let you go to the bottom of the ocean, let you design one. And actually, we're doing better with space suits than we are with ocean suits, right? We have to send robots down there. And now we're sending robots to space, which is probably a good play. Because there's something here too, especially when we speak like the Aquarius and this new ideal and this realignment and this revolution, right? So that all feels Uranian. Like I will say that, just realizing this more and more, because I just taught Aquarius for my school. It's like, well, my point of Aquarian view is rather Uranian and rather revolutionary. And so the great kind of question for me, and I'll ask you this for you wise beings who are listening to teach me, please, of like, oh, I want to meet the Saturnian version of Aquarius. Like, how is Aquarius Saturnine? And answers come quickly, right? So we want to be careful not to like trap an image of a sign by like its association in modern times with some house. Like I have a hard time with that. And I also see it, and I also am inclined to do it, because I received astrology that way. It's hard not to give astrology that way. And most importantly, because there's some value to it. But a lot of people learn Aquarius because they say like, oh, it is the 11th, or they learn the 11th house because they're like, oh, that's Aquarius. And the two have just become completely conflated. Well, Aquarius is the first when Aquarius is rising. And it's the second when Capricorn's rising. And the third when Sagittarius is rising. And, there's a rising sign that will put Aquarius in each of the 12 places. Many will kind of connect to, learn, and teach a sign through its planetary association. So Aquarius is Uranus to the modern mind, but for thousands of years before, Aquarius is Saturnine. That's an ancient structure, an ancient system. I mean, so if you want to go far and beyond, and you want to go explore space, you better bring a solid suit and ship, and you better have some forethought about things like solar storms, right? And prepare with proper shielding. You feel prepare, shield. Do you feel the Saturn words? If you want to create a better way to relate in civilization, in community, right? First of all, why is Libra the 9th when Aquarius is on the rise? Because you better pray in the temple of relationship if you want to build better community. That will save you from the transhumanistic totalitarian nightmare that is rapidly forming around you. Because that's not about personal relationships. That's about emperors and serfs. Do you see? Because if you do not choose to pray in the temple of the 9th for Aquarius' sake, that is called the realm of Libra and Venus. If you do not bring the spirit of relating in balance and harmony, you will never rise in the way of equality. You instead will, in this elitist way, see that you can bring harmony to the world through control. Maybe you're right. Maybe your economic forum is actually not for the world, but for you. Maybe we don't want robot parts just because you do, and you think that's the way that we are going. Maybe we'd prefer to be earthlings. Maybe we'd prefer, instead of going out to explore space, to explore Earth and to bring our consciousness down into the seas. But it is a final frontier here. It might actually be more final than space because, again, we are just not designed to go. But ships and shielding, submarines and such. You got to bring air, whether you're going to space or whether you're going here on Earth deep into the sea. We have this really interesting mixture of air and water images when we contemplate the constellation traditionally aligned to the sign of Aquarius, the water bearer. Or you can look at the star card, which is said to be the Aquarius card of the tarot, right? Where he's like the naked woman, like kind of out in space with the stars pouring water, interestingly, into the tranquil pool. Like, shouldn't we be getting water from the pool and bringing it to the peeps? That's an interesting thing to contemplate in and of itself. I want to leave that there. But, you know, Aquarius with its airwaves and its glyph is often seen or received as like a water sign by folks. And it's important to know that the air itself, from a traditional temperament point of view, is said to be hot. It excites, it's up, right? But it's wet. It brings together. And that's the gift of the mind that is prayed in the temple of relating, that is passionate about. The fifth of Aquarius is Gemini, that is passionate about exploration, wonder, and communication. Like, that's an art. If we want to rise in the way of the Aquarian design, we must be passionate about wonder and pray in a temple called relating. Do you see what happens when we release ourselves from learning astrology with only one sign in the East, right? Globally speaking, from the center of Earth, there is one cusp on the East, and it is 0 Aries. There is a truth to this so-called natural zodiac that I will say that this describes the alignment of the terrestrial houses as the signs. But where are you sitting on Earth? I mean, let me do this. This is how this new moon aligned here in California. As I described before, it was in the 5th. Aquarius is the passion place when Libra's on the rise. Contemplate that. And where am I in this moment now? Well, Capricorn's rising, Mercury's standing on the horizon, perhaps Pluto about to rise, not to humanize. And Aquarius will, of course, be next. I thought maybe we were there already. Foiled. Okay, well, I want to continue talking about space and the deep dive. And maybe there's something in this time. Let me go back to solar signs. With Aquarius new moon, followed as it usually is by a Pisces new moon. But how rare to have an Aquarius new moon conjoined Saturn, followed by a Pisces new moon conjoined Jupiter. Go find me the last time. And find me the time before that. And the time before that. And you're going to start seeing that we are actually in a pretty rare experience of, well, double domicile. And again, Sag Jupiter with Capricorn Saturn, followed by a short epoch of Pisces Jupiter with Aquarius Saturn. It's an amazing thing. Go play. go do some time research in your time machine called astrology, okay? So perhaps it's the Pisces time that will bring us back to the waters. And now in Aquarius, we are here to get out into space. I think there's something beautiful there, actually. And it's alive in the hermetic or alchemical axiom called solve et coagula, break apart and put back together. And it's always a tricky thing to express. I'm always a little worried about this because we know, it's necessary at this time where we've been running such, I'd call it rational, but it's not been rational. It's like the programmed mind paradigm where like thought is exalted above all else. Or is it thought? Or rather memorize, regurgitate, rinse and repeat and comply. Anyway, it's been mind. And so it is not wrong for us to say, you got to get out of the mind and get into the heart, right? But sometimes you got to get out of the heart and get into the mind. Sometimes the greatest view of the world's waters is from space, right? That's like some of the modern paradigm. Like, how are we studying climate change? Regardless of what you think about that and how the data is being interpolated and whatnot, which I think is an intriguing place for us to go play and to be careful not to just, trust the authorities. You can do science too. Yeah, you can look like that's what science is. It's a spirit, not a people. Okay, anyway. what we are learning about this world is us looking at the world from space. Now, we don't want to only do that because if you're not in the world, then you don't care. Right? But, you know, a lot of the, well, you know, the space agencies like spending a lot of time looking back at Earth and getting that like larger view. So for me, that's like the truest kind of Aquarian calling is the eagle eye overview. And how do we attain that when we are, you know, human being grounded to the earth? Well, part of that actually technology, right? Like literally planes and spaceships. But how about like learning to close your eyes and going within to go without? Like this is the old practice. That the prana, the breath, is the vehicle, right? And when the heart slows, the mind can relax and then open to higher mind. I mean, the Mayan daykeepers were on to some significantly astronomical cycles of time that seem impossible without like either higher technology, which is possible, or, you know, extraterrestrial or spiritual participation, certainly possible, or that spiritual participation, right, is happening here on Earth. And sometimes it's going within that allows us to go without. It's going below to get above. And it's amazing to see that, you know, so much of the Mayan design is into exploring Xibalba Bay, which is in the underworld and accessed often through the water in the cave and the cenote. But it's also a place in space where the Ouroboros, the serpent, bites its tail. The cosmic serpent, your Milky Way. Come to Mexico and I'll share more about that. I'm just reminded I want to bring up a page where I can show you a little bit about that trip. So I'm going to be typing some things as I try to continue speaking. Meanwhile, all right, and this is the time of day when the other residents of this house awaken to prepare for education. All right, so let me try to get into hurry up mode as well. I know you don't have all day. Right, so I'm getting close, by the way, over here. Getting out of the heart and into the mind. Could you imagine the audacity of somebody saying that at this time of patriarchal design? Like, no, that's the wrong direction. We must get out of the mind and into the heart. Okay, yes, next month and every month. But insolve et coagula, break apart and put back together, break apart and purify each side and then bring back together. How about we let the heart do the heart and the mind do the mind? Wait, shouldn't the mind be in the left hand and the heart in the right? How did that go again? And sometimes they switch sides and above and below and all the things. Yes. Let the heart do the heart. Feel your feels. You don't need to drop a story onto your heartfelt experience. I mean, please don't. You're not feeling if you're thinking about your feelings, friends. You feel me? Oh, sorry. You know what I'm saying? Now, it is not wrong for us to, especially when the storm is really raging, for us to need to contemplate and try to receive the why to help us understand how to navigate, right? But feel your feels. It's okay to cry without exactly knowing why. And sometimes it's actually more powerful tears, when you don't try to write words on each drop that run down your cheek. Let the feels be the feels. And let the thought be the thought. There is something in the high mountaintops, or now with the planes and the pressureless zones so they can fly fast, or now with the spaceships in a place where there's no air at all. And you can fly right away from that design of our mother's calling called gravity. Well, at least in the physics of our time. Getting away from the tidal wave that is so overwhelming. There is no rational thought when the air is so wet that you cannot even breathe it. Well, let's speak from the other side. The ability to manipulate a mind is an incredible thing. The ability to manipulate compassion, I am now witnessing, is such a stronger, I guess I'll call it magic, though I don't think it's a light one. I'm very much a student of, how do I say this in a way that's not too polarized? Well, fuck it, the wicked wizards of this world. Because I'm like, whoa, y'all do some pretty good magic over there. No, it's bad, but it's strong. Amazing. What's going on? Can I look at that without succumbing to the fear that if I look, I become? Or I will cage myself if I study a thing that I do not wish to exist? Does it exist because I look? Or does it exist because I refuse to? Why would I refuse to? Because I'm afraid? Am I afraid because it feels bad? Or am I afraid that I'm making it just by seeing it? And now, of course, I'm speaking obscurely. Some of you who are inclined the way that I am in studying life know exactly what I'm speaking about. Some of you, hopefully, will ride those same words into a place that speaks for you. The sacred science, let us keep it sacred by keeping it scientific. Learn your rules. Right? Like if you want to expand with astrology, you got to learn the language, you got to learn the syntax, you got to learn the rules. And then when you look at Aquarius, you can look where Saturn is on the chart, or Uranus, or maybe you don't want to do any of that stuff and realign the Kung Fu to your own paradigm's design. Is that cool? Who am I to say yes or no? With Mercury currently retrograde in Capricorn, I suggest we look back to how it has been done, even if you choose not to do it the way of old. Let the tree drink from deep roots so its branches can grow. Let us keep the sacred science scientific by keeping it sacred. These are images. Who am I to tell you how to see life? Won't I learn more if I remember I have twice as many ears as mouths? What if I had the courage to ask? How much more would we learn if we remembered science as a practice, not a person? Not a title. Let us keep our sacred science sacred by honoring the science, and scientific by honoring the sacred. Scientific meaning something that actually, through our observations, hypotheses, experimentations, receives results of advancement and evolution. And if not, put it in the trash and try again. What's that thing that Thomas Edison said? Something like, I stole this thing from Tesla. Oh wait, no, it's not that one. Something like, oh, I didn't fail 1,000 times in trying to make the light bulb. I succeeded in making the not light bulb. That's not what he said, by the way, but something to that effect. Somebody please dig up the quote. Right, so that's helpful when we're actually sitting in team in the room, or if I'm like in the comments realm. And by the way, I'm there in odd ways, says the sacred side of this thing. Like somebody in these days, what do? Like hold a button and ask a machine. And there's that quote for you. And it comes into the room and we reorganize and realign, because the actual quote that I'm like looking for and trying to paraphrase would do so much more than my sad memory and reinterpretation could. Okay. Interesting to see Aquarius in that Edison design, much more Cancer in the Tesla thing. And direct current versus alternating current are also very interesting explorations. In fact, the next class for the School of Astrology, which is this Sunday for this year, this golden year, it is a Sunday school, will be on polarity and the truth that current can only alternate. Okay. What I would advise, and let's look at it just a little bit more of the chart, because I do hear the stirring upstairs, and so a little bit more quickly now. You know, the nodes have recently changed signs, and this idea of north equals earth at this point is a fabulous place to play. I'm less inclined in that particular design. Then following the lights, moon and sun themselves, rather than the points in space where their paths intersect. I'm fascinated by nodes, and there's much to say about that. I mean, including that because this new moon, and especially the full moon to follow, is so far from the nodes, that we are in the times called the bending times, or some say the moon wobbles times, when the new and full moons will be least eclipsed. We are literally halfway in time and space, actually, between the places where moon and sun met, in such a way that we can experience the shadow play of eclipse. We are halfway in between the previous eclipse season and the one to come. And I will say it actually makes this time quite eclipsy. It's like when the dragon of the race behind passes the baton to the one to come. Why so much Capricorn in an Aquarian chart? Look at that focus. Capricorn, Aquarius, Pisces. Let's look at the new moon next month. Look at this focus. Capricorn, Aquarius, Pisces. Let's look at the next month. Look at this focus, Aquarius, Pisces. Or sorry, that's the full moon, the Virgo full moon. Here's the next new moon, Aquarius, Pisces, Aries. Everyone is traveling together in these clusters. Check out how Uranus is like breaking out. And Uranus far enough from Mars and Venus to receive these trines with Jupiter between on the sextile. And so the sexy trine, or I guess more formally, the sextile fan of Mars, Jupiter, and Uranus. Mars, Venus, Jupiter, and Uranus. Mars actually moving in this time faster than Venus, for she has just stationed direct. She has stopped Venus literally in the moment of the Aquarius new moon at 7 arc minutes per day. She gets up to 75 and change. That's a slow Venus, and Mars right now moving 44, chasing her down. And in fact, we'll do so fast enough that when this new moon aligns, we will have on February 16th, sorry, a full moon of this new moon seed. a Venus-Mars conjunction, which actually the proper grammar is to speak the name of faster moving planet first. So in this case, a Mars-Venus conjunction on February 16th, February 15th for some of you, but none of you will experience on your local version of the Pope Empire's calendar on February 14th, as if this meeting of Venus and Mars is in protest to a Hallmark holiday called Valentine's Day. An interesting thing to contemplate in and of itself. Venus and Mars conjoined for some time in the sky and yet so far away. I want to show you that actually. Here is right now where I sit. So my sad camera, which was going to run out and get a picture, will no longer see Mars. But look at how far apart Venus and Mars are now. And the reason is there's not only longitude, my friends, but latitude too. Mars is south of the ecliptic and Venus is well north, like way more north than many of you might believe she can be. Venus is currently 7 degrees away from the ecliptic plane. And so as we move through time, like I'll just go through, well, sidereal days, we're going to find they can join on the 16th, but they'll still be quite far away in space. But coming closer and closer together, that's the Mars-Venus conjunction. And later there's a Venus-Mars conjunction in the very first degree of Aquarius. Oops. Well, buttons got out of control, and so we just put it out of the way. Said Atlantis. Okay, so there are things here where I think beautifully Capricorn is the 12th of Aquarius. Why? This also speaks to the nature of alternative current. We say the 12th is hidden things. Well, for Aquarius, that is Capricorn. Now, they are also traditionally, if you honor the Saturnian truth of Aquarius, like in girding, meaning that the same planet is the landlord of both houses. And so there is a connection between this particular version of the 12th and 1st that does not exist anywhere else. Well, except in the Leo rising design. And let's speak about that another time. So there is an opportunity, I will say, and I believe that this Pisces, Jupiter, and Neptune on other sides of that particular sign and their own connections to like Mercury sextile Pisces, Neptune in this chart, and Venus and Mars in their sextile with Pisces, Jupiter, there's an opportunity for us to ground that kind of more intuitive, compassionate waterway and let these kind of auric like field, these sides of Aquarius called Capricorn and Pisces, to both to which Aquarius, according to our traditional view, literally aspect theory, is blind to. There's an opportunity in this coagulation of all planets in these like 3 signs, and it's traveling that way for some time, where Aquarius is going to be able to feel and experience, I believe, it's Capricorn and Pisces neighbors in a way that's not always available to that sign. And so what would that say? Get grounded, Capricorn, Taurus, right? Now, sometimes like if there's too many sandbags, the hot air balloon can't fly, right? So getting grounded can feel like the enemy of the air. The air is said to be hot and wet, while the earth is said to be cold and dry, right? So that, I mean, like that doesn't happen easily, but again, root down and let the branches grow. And the stronger the trunk, the greater they reach, but this trunk is strong because of the roots, and the roots allow us to drink that deep water, that water unseen. Yeah. And in that sense, we actually bring the earth between the air and the water, which is interesting because water, we go cold and wet, earth cold and dry. How do you get to the air of hot and wet from cold and dry? This is called, opposites on the square. I just say not on a chart, but on the square of opposites itself, of the temperament square. And so those with eyes to see and ears to hear, those that have been initiated know exactly where I'm coming from. Those who have not are like, what? are you talking about, dude? Good question. Okay. I want to honor also this like bull, this trapezoid of Scorpio South Node, retrograde Mercury with Pluto and Capricorn here, Neptune in Pisces, and the North Node in Taurus. Now, Mercury is the only one of these beings who is visible and is just getting far enough from the Aquarius Sun to actually be seen in the morning side. It's a little bit more so in the northern hemisphere because Mercury is very far north of the equator, ecliptic at this time. Like I'm excited to go see, hopefully tomorrow. That will be part of my own experience. We see in this very interest of polarity. Well, let me say more about that bull and how it's connecting these things that cannot be seen except for Mercury, who in that very kind of liminal psychopomp sense is, I believe, helping us receive this like higher vision, but how retrograde from Aquarius back into Capricorn is saying, wait a second, you say you want a revolution, well, understand where you're coming from, like learn your true history. You say you want to advance your technology, your astrology, like go back and study your roots, connect to the ancient ones and the ancestors and the foundations of your craft, you see. And doing that with Pluto, thrice Mercury Pluto conjunctions during this retrograde loop, as we call it. It's a very interesting thing. You can see it's like Mercury high-fiving Charon, the ferryman and the riverboat Styx, like this celebration of psychopomp. And there's something about the depths of evolution, and that when we look back, we can walk forward in a good way. I mean, it's an interesting pairing, those two. As is Venus and Mars. I mean, this is just a very typical polarity. Some will say yin and yang, some will say benefic and malefic. Interestingly, traditionally, insect will say both of the nightly way. What about moon and sun? Some will say yin and yang, right? I mean, you can see the polarity there as well. What about Aquarius, the way that it's taught in modern times? Guilty. And Saturn, where does that compute? You can feel that with Uranus on the square. But if Aquarius is about change and freedom and revolution, like is Taurus the place for Uranus to exceed? I mean, this is why modern astrology suggests Uranus is in fall in the sign of Taurus, probably. And so that square of Taurinus with Aquarius, if Aquarius wants change, is Uranus helping from the soil of Taurus or challenging? That's another interesting image of polarity at this time. And I love like the Venus Uranus, the Mars Uranus trines, and with Jupiter in between, because there is something about this truth that we will remember and find like the water in the soil from which plants can grow if we get grounded, Capricorn with our like foundations and Taurus with our embodiment. And so, you know, you cannot ride the hot air balloon into the higher atmosphere if you're weighed down by sandbags, but you can't ride there without a basket to ride in either. You need the earth. Do you see what I mean? And what about the water? Is that what you're getting away from? Well, maybe we fly high just so we can observe. What about the Mars, Venus, true black moon, Lilith, Chiron and Aries, T-square, or their wedge with Pisces, Jupiter? Always too much in a chart to talk about. What about this Aquarius seed that will sprout with the first quarter moon, the waxing half moon in Taurus? What about the flower that's fall when the moon is full in the sign of Leo? I mean, just looking at that polarity, if you will, polarity of Aquarius and Leo, and this idea of the revolutionary and royalty, could they exist without one another? but it's very much a place of creation, that axis, right? Leo, just, the inspired flame. But, and I think this is in this design of this lunation, and something that we can all bring our own intentions to. Sometimes it's easier to write the article when you're sitting in the coffee shop and other people are clicking away too, or in the library, where it's like, hush. But we are in community in the field. So that's a really interesting place. I think that's so ripe and alive in this month, in the month to come, in this kind of Aquarian Pisces space, which says, look, yes, the science, but the sacred. Yes, the card, but receive and read the art, not the words that were written about this. Receive and read the chart and the images and the relations and the connections and the love, not just the rules and the math. And maybe in the Aquarius month, more math, and in the Pisces month, less, right? But at the same time, these signs, which will always at least hold hands, even though they might be blind to that very touch, they're a place that offers us an opportunity, I think, to come into a greater heart, right? Because when we get up off of the earth, we can see how there really is just one water world. And that the water, which we're told is life itself, which in the Pythagorean design has associations with the aether, and holds the key of all memory. Some would even suggest that this water that I drink has some of Pythagoras's pee. But if that's true, I can't drink without getting some Genghis Khan too, right? We are in a weird realm, in a strange place, and polarity is part of that way. But do not let polarity deceive you. Having positive and negative charge is the necessity of electricity. Do not be divided and conquered. Honor our interdependence to create love. What is the image of a better world? How do you get to that place? Have a look around. Truly explore with your eyes the signs of the now, and retrograde back to how it has been, and not just in its bad, but also in its beautiful root. Drink from that deep place that we cannot see to help us branch into a higher space so we can get a wider view. Okay, that was a lot of words and I guess a lot of mind. I want to share a couple things with you. Someone just reminded me to share this, right? This, by the way, is at the community page of the Earth Astrology School, where we have just begun our golden year of study, where we follow the sun. And much of that, by the way, will feel like review. It's totally still open. Come on in. Thanks to my beloved who wrote this on my site. I'm just saw it today for the first time. Class is in session, but it's not too late to join. The School of Astrology. I was inspired to start a school, and we have a great team of exploring seekers who are sharing and creating and so much more. There's 36 classes on the curriculum, but I'll be teaching more than 36. There's 12 sacred astronomy number magic classes. They're literally, sacred geometry, where we will be at the launch pad drawing circles and using the compass and the rule to study creation through the act of creating. 36 classes, of which those are 12, where we study from oneness in the circle of spirit to the 12 spoked wheel of the zodiac, 1 to 12, oneness to 12ness too, which brings us back to the heart. 12 of those 36 will be archetype classes. I've already spoken from my heart about Capricorn and about Aquarius, and Pisces will come next. And then each of those classes has an associated astrology class. So in Capricorn time, we spoke about golden time and earth astrology and earthing the chart and sacred astronomy and literally how the chart works and how this horizon is the ground and these kinds of things. Hey, bud. Good morning. And the Aquarius class will be a polarity class. The Pisces class will be a class on the elements. The Aries class will be a class on the modalities. By the time we get to Taurus, I'll be speaking about the path of the soul, lunar nodes, special parts of the moon, and much more. And then the Gemini month, we will tune into the horoscopos and the angles and much more. And as you can see, I gotta go. So please head over to GeminiBrett.com, and just here on the homepage, you can check out the school. You can learn much more about it. Actually, if you go to the courses page, there's this pop-up we've been meaning to take off, but you could actually sign up here. I think a thing's gonna pop up. Oh, thank you, Anna. No, it's not. Anyway, so come on in and check out more about the class. So one thing I did want to share is this dragon energy retreat in Tulum. Alexander and Leah are coming over from Serbia to Mexico to present some energy healing designs, but also Alex's, and maybe Alex and Leah's, I'm not sure, I'll find out, new way of playing with Saros series to understand more about incarnation and perhaps past lives and future lives, since I know that's part of their own study. Ursula Stockter is a dear friend, an amazing painter, an amazing astrologer who runs a great school in Mexico City. Will be presenting on the 36 faces and the archetypal alignments of the minor arcana, the 36 cards of the tarot, and the 36 decans of the zodiac. I'm going to speak about calendars and consciousness, and also the turning of the ages. Let me just get to the schedule. Isn't it here somewhere? This is what the community page looks like at school, by the way. We're doing it outside of Facebook. I'm doing this live at Facebook, so maybe not offend the forum where I'm currently exploring, but anyway, there's a reason for us to have this in a separate space. This is the schedule, and it's completely open. I would say reach out to Ursula Stockter, who you can find pretty easily online, or reach out to me. I'm just lead with Ursula because she knows more about the retreat, and I'm pretty busy right now, as is she. But here's a look at what we'll be teaching. I'm going early to see the Chichen Itza Shadow Serpent on the 19th, just before the equinox at Chichen Itza. So if you come down, come there, and we will link up. I'm not going to do something like too organized there. Might give a talk at the Planetary. I might just ask the hotel if I could. But for the most part, it's like go pilgrimage, connect to the Shadow Serpent. And after, on the 25th, I'm going to lead a small group of folks to Coba, which is another amazing Maya site. We're going to go see Muyil, and we'll see Tulum. During this time, we're going to have Temescal, cacao ceremony, like so much more. Anyway, it's there. So check it out. The Dragon Energy Retreat. All right, last thing I want to share, and we will close it out this way, is this song by Eric Deutsch, based upon my own astrological notes that I sent him, and symbols and much more. If you want to see how that's done, you can buy this whole 13 New Moons of 22 album here at Deutsch's Bandcamp page, Eric with a K, deutschmusic.bandcamp.com. And if you buy the digital album for $7 or more, you name your price, your zip file will have all the songs, and will also have like 39 pages, I think, of my astrological notes that I sent to Eric too. kind of guide and inspire these songs. And so I'm gonna make sure my sound is shared here so you can hear this clearly. And I just looked without looking. Okay, it's good. And I'm going to say thank you so much for spending some time with me this morning or evening or afternoon, wherever you are, whether live or in what I currently perceive to be the future. And we'll go out. I would just invite you, if you have time, to focus on your breath, to like slow down and open the ears of your soul to this song for this Aquarius new moon, which is just aligned. May the lights ever guide us home. See you in space, folks.